It is draft week. What does that mean? Talking about horizontal boards. Have you never heard of what that is? You're in luck because we're going to break them down both on offense and defense with graphics that producer Dave made. And we have one that shows every position as well. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some interesting comments from Rob Brzezinski, which raised a major red flag with me, and Jonathan Grenard, and how a trade could actually come to fruition. Welcome to a draft week episode of the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Real Forno Show, your go-to spot for everything Minnesota Vikings. Hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness, the beat writer and NFL draft guru for A to Z Sports. Bringing you the sharpest breakdowns, film study, analytics, draft scouting, and unfiltered takes on your beloved Vikings. Whether he's diving into the latest roster moves, pre-game outlooks, post-game reactions, or hunting for the next big prospect in SKOL search, he's got you covered from every angle. So buckle up, Vikings fans. Let's get into it.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. And we are in draft week. As you saw earlier this morning when I posted on the little post section on the YouTube channel. One, if you saw it, thank you for subscribing. Two, if you haven't, please do help us out. And it's free. And if you want a little bit extra, just ask anybody who's a member and in the Discord. I posted some really interesting Vikings rumors this morning. And the only way to get that is by becoming a paid member and linking your YouTube channel to the Discord. Now, something that was really interesting about the entire discussion is the inclusion of Rob Brzezinski as general manager. And over the course of the next few days, we are going to have a lot of discussions about the Vikings and the NFL draft. But I want to start the show by talking about a quote that Rob Brzezinski had when talking to the media today. It wasn't really made official on the Vikings media page that Brzezinski and O'Connell were going to talk to the media today. We kind of figured O'Connell would because it's the first day of organized team activities. That's been commonplace for the last couple of years. But we didn't know Brzezinski was going to talk officially, and he did. What I found interesting was this comment from Brzezinski, and quite frankly, it scares me a little bit. Yeah, you won't see a lot of changes. Like within the room, some of the responsibilities would be different, obviously. But by and large, the setup will be the same. And it's something that we've talked about quite a bit with the firing of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. They are really betting on the decision maker just doing a better job with the data that they're being given. And that the people giving him the data are not the problem. It was only the person making the decisions based on the data. I think that's pretty nerve-wracking to an extent, because that means you are putting even more onus on Kwesi Adofo-Mensah just being really, really, really bad at his job. Everybody else is good, only Kwesi bad. They kind of did the same thing with the quarterback situation, placing all the onus on the fact that all the failures at quarterback were the fault of Kwesi, when we know Kevin O'Connell gave his firm stamp of approval on J.J. McCarthy. They told us time and time again, we're not going to make a quarterback decision without Kevin O'Connell's input. And he was even deemed the quarterback killer. And that came from a report by Alec Lewis a while back. So now we're looking at a situation where the Vikings have a group of scouts and a group of people in the personnel department that are the same. Ryan Gregson's still in place. Rob Brzezinski is obviously here. And the only real change other than Brzezinski taking over as interim GM is he hired a salary cap consultant on a small contract, basically through the end of the NFL draft. Well, are we sure that that's the right strategy? There's nothing we can do about it now. We can't just go back and say, hey, we have to redo the last 3 months because, oh, this was a terrible idea. This was always the end result. You are betting that the only problem was Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's decision-making. That is the bet that the Vikings made. That is the path that they chose. And now they are going to have to live with the consequences. Is it going to be a situation where just having Brzezinski and O'Connell and Flores likely collaborating on those decisions being so significantly better than anything Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah did. Are we sure? Are we sure that that's going to bear out different results? And the fact that Brzezinski has essentially said very little changes are happening from year over year inside the draft room. Kind of concerning to me.
You
There's
sure he
nothing we can
wasn't
do
just
about
talking about how the draft room's set up, where the tables are?
Because he's saying some of the responsibilities will be different, hinting at, obviously his job has changed, but by and large, the setup will be the same. Setup to me isn't just how you have people positioned in the draft room, how you have the board set up and organized. It's about how your process is going, because Rob Brzezinski, in the course of the entire night, will not be the only one fielding phone calls, will not be the only one making phone calls, will not be the only one having communications with other teams in the league, because he is one person and you have certain people that are designated to make and answer said phone calls. And the fact that you have the same people in the personnel department that are making these scouting boards, that are writing these scouting reports and giving the information to the general manager, that is the concerning part. Yeah, if you want to reorganize things a little bit, we're going to have Grigson sit 2 seats to the left so Rob Brzezinski can sit in Grigson's old seat. Like, that's all the semantic bullshit. Who cares? To me, the concern lies, and it's something I've been relatively consistent about. You are betting that the decision maker is the only problem within the front office. And the fact that Brzezinski came out and said it the way he did just lends even more credence to that statement. Now, if they end up being right, none of this matters. If Brzezinski's just really good and makes a bunch of great draft picks, none of what I say matters. They were right. They proved it, and the results bore the fruit of that. But it is concerning that they're really planting every ounce of blame on the shoulders of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. Now, does he deserve a bunch of it? Sure. He is the one who got fired after all. But it feels like they're just lumping everything onto his shoulders. And there are always people who are going to be scapegoated when they're let go from a job. You've seen it time and time again in whatever field you are. When somebody gets let go, there's a tendency to just be like, oh, they're gone. This was their system. It was obvious it's their fault why it stunk, so we're going to be able to make it better. There is that kind of, for lack of a better term, arrogance throughout most professions. When somebody is gone, you naturally blame them for the shortcomings of whatever you're dealing with. But that doesn't mean that just because you can blame them and that they're gone from the equation, that doesn't automatically mean that it makes it better. And to me, I have concerns about the fact that everything else is the same. Everything. And only having one different variable, just one, is a major cause for concern.
But could it be the Wilfs doing a repeat of when they fired Zim and Spielman, telling everybody to run it back with everybody they've got? We want to prove that the team was better than was Zim and Spielman. And they did. Mm-hmm. Could they be telling Rob to run it back? We want to see if it improves this draft with everybody in place. Then we know for sure it's Kwesi, or that we know it's time for change and they've given it the excuse, well, we ran it back. You guys in the scouting office, the decision makers, that were feeding Kwesi, and now Brez got it wrong. You're fired.
I think it's very possible that that's exactly what they're doing. And it would fit the Wilfs MO because they did the same thing and told Kwesi, which is another reason why, like, the whole Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, I guess, for lack of a better term, experiment with his 4 years, he didn't really get to do what he wanted to do. He had to go with the agenda of the Wilfs, which, you know what? that's also the job he signed up for. So, it's also his fault too, because he agreed to those terms. He agreed that that's how he was going to deliver a performance. He was going to do it within those parameters. But I have major concerns that this is actually going to happen. This is actually going to work. I don't know. We'll find out. But the fact that he came out and basically confirmed that pretty much everything else is the same, big red flag. Big red flag. But there's really not a whole lot of points to continuing that conversation, because it's just kind of beating a dead horse. And it is what it is. This is the path they chose. This is the bed they want to lie in. Let them lie in it. Let them figure it out. And you know what? If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, we told you so. Anyways.
And it'll result in personnel changes. That's probably the route I think they may have taken. So, but we'll find out. And does the new GM, whoever that is, whether it's Brez or somebody else that gets put into place after the draft, get to make his own choices? And he's already working on, this year's class has already been selected under the old system. So is he behind the power curve, or is he going to get to start fresh?
Yeah. We'll find out. We'll find out how this all plays out. Let's move forward. And I think before we break into the horizontal board stuff, which I know is a lot of the discussion here, let's answer Freddie's question first. All the mocks have us saying Dylan Thieneman or Jemai McCoy. I haven't looked at today's mocks. I'll do that tonight, because I'm going to put together everything from that perspective and the final mock draft tracker, which will be the subject of our Thursday afternoon show, breaking down the latest trends and how things have changed over the course of the last week. Let's put it this way. Dylan Thieneman last week, I'm going to pull it up. Mock draft tracker. It won 49 mocks. 28 of them were Dylan Thieneman. I think it's a psyop. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all.
And J.R. Reed put out a mock today, and he had not Thieneman, because Thieneman went higher.
Yeah. I don't buy Thieneman to the Vikings. I think it's just Daniel Jeremiah did it on February 24th. He's a white safety replacing a white safety in Harrison Smith. And I think it's really that simple. Sometimes when you're making mock drafts, I'm guilty of it too, because I am not an expert on all 32 teams. I'm an expert on the Vikings. And sometimes you just kind of get into like, oh, I need to put somebody here. So everybody seems to be doing Thieneman. All right, let's just put him here. I think there's a lot of that. And that's not me insulting anybody. It's just, look, it's human nature. It's very hard to be an expert on all 32 teams. There has been little conversation coming out of TCO Performance Center. The things I heard this morning, not a single one of them was about Dylan Thieneman to the Vikings. Not one. I heard a lot of really good stuff about what could happen. And one of those things that I heard was something Adam Schefter reported, how the Eagles are serious about acquiring Jonathan Grenard, and those talks might be revisited during the NFL draft. I heard from two sources. One, a Viking source, one, an Eagles source, that's a real thing. It's likely that those talks are going to really ramp up, and it's very likely that he could be traded. Now, I think one of the interesting things about trading Grenard at this stage is the realization of assets. When you have NFL draft picks, they are picks. They are future players. But once you get to the NFL draft, those picks become realized and they become actual players. So because they become actual players, now you're talking about trading Grenard for people, not Grenard for picks. And the fact that the Eagles may see a bunch of players that they really like come off the board a little earlier, they might be pressuring that, like feel that internal pressure in order to make a trade so they can go and get a player like Grenard because they don't believe in the players that are still on board. So it's a lot of realization elements when it comes to this entire discussion. Now, should the Vikings trade him? No. They should give Grenard a raise and say, thank you for staying. But they're not going to do that. They have already said they just want to keep him at the deal he's at. And that has just come from reports from multiple reporters. They just want Grenard to play on his contract, which is their right because, well, both parties agreed to it. But in the end of the day, I'll always be pro player because, player X, Javon Hargrave, signed a 2-year deal, but he didn't quite live up to the expectations the Vikings had. Oh, Vikings cut him. Well, the Vikings should live up to their end of the deal too. It's got to work both ways. If the team just can't have their cake and eat it too, that would make them Adam Banks from the Mighty Ducks. Nobody likes any dynamic cake eater. It has to be fair on both sides. Grenard overperformed over the first 2 years as a totality whole from his $19 million average annual value salary. Give him a 2-year extension, bump that average annual value up to $26.5 million. He'll be tied for either 12th or 13th highest paid edge rusher in the league. He gets a raise. The Vikings get to manipulate the cap again. Everybody wins. But they haven't shown that they want to do that. They want to do other things. They want to just have him play out the rest of the deal, where it's $22.1 million on the salary cap this year and next year. And it's $18.39 million in base salary, $19 million in total cash. Well, I got to tell you, I would just give him the raise because he's good. And now, instead of potentially getting a first-round pick for your best defensive player, you're looking at 54 and maybe something else on top of that. That is not what I call good business. Now, if you end up hitting, let's say you use that pick for Malachi Lawrence out of Central Florida, who has drawn some comparisons to Jonathan Grenard. Okay, now you have a rookie who's making rookie salary, who's going to save you a lot of cash and cap over the next 2 years. That's great, but he's nowhere near the player that Jonathan Grenard was. That's a problem in itself. So the Vikings have kind of painted themselves into a corner. But I also think they've handled things the relative right way outside of just doing the absolute right thing by giving him an extension, because they have allowed Grenard to go explore his own market. They have agreed to trade terms with multiple teams and said, hey, when you agree to an extension, we'll execute a trade. Well, guess what? Nobody wants to pay him what he's asking for. So maybe he should just stay and agree to maybe a slightly lesser deal. Or, hey, maybe the Vikings just agree to give him like a $5 million option bonus as like a raise, and then you just keep him for 2 more years. I don't know what the full-time answer is going to be here, but the fact that the Vikings again might be trading Grenard, to me, is just incredibly frustrating because he's your best defensive player. You don't trade the engine to your defense. You just don't. It's bad process. But that's the reality in which we live. And it could end up netting the Vikings another draft pick or two during the course of the NFL draft, which, Dave, would be a major asset for them in the short and long term, because it would give them another player on a rookie scale contract, which they need a lot of those to hit. And they don't have to all be stars. They don't have to all be starters. Be contributors. Because guess what? A player on a rookie deal is better than Tavier Thomas getting $2 million to play special teams. That is just as big of a deal as your first round pick being a starting caliber player, because it all matters when it comes to salary cap math. And $1 million here, $1 million there can make a difference between you getting a top line free agent to change the tide of your organization, or maybe, as Dave wanted to last week, acquire a player like Dexter Lawrence, because they wouldn't have been in the situation they were last offseason if they would have hit on some day 2 picks. Hell, if they would have had day 2 picks. So everything matters with this conversation. Everything has a price. Everything has a cause and effect result. Now, what the Vikings are looking at is just a frustrating element of the entire discussion. We're talking about trading Jonathan Grenard once again. And quite frankly, Dave, I hate it.
It is what it is. The NFL is going to try to generate some sort of drama for draft night. There's no drama in pick one. Everybody knows what that's going to be. So they're going to try to generate drama up and down the board, and down the board, that includes the Vikings. And if the Vikings, who might they trade with? Oh, Grenard with the Eagles. Especially with the Eagles generating drama, they may trade A.J. Brown to the Patriots. All that sort of stuff plays into what the NFL is trying to bring us entertainment-wise, is sort of the, Wives of Atlanta, whatever that show is. They want to bring eyeballs to their sites, to the TV, towards everything else. And if they can throw up a little tidbit like Jonathan Grenard's about to be traded, says so-and-so, that will drive that. Now, do we believe it? It's possible. Sure, absolutely. Do we want it? Nah, that differs. Everybody wants Turner to step up and take the reins. But everybody knows somebody will get hurt, and then we're screwed. And you can say that about a bunch of positions on the Minnesota right now. That's why drafting so poorly over the last few years, not building up the depth like we needed to, has hurt us. So Brez has got to nail this draft. Will he? I don't think he has enough picks.
We'll find out. I think they're going to move down. And at the very end of this draft, what we'll end up doing is going through a quick, trying to be predictive on how the simulator delivers. And then the last draft we're going to do is going to be Thursday afternoon, trying to be as predictive as possible. All the drafts this week that I'm doing, they're all from a predictive lens. We're close enough where I feel like that is the only route to go. You guys know the players I really like. Everybody knows I'm big on Kenny and Sadiq and CJ Allen at 18th or with a trade back, which is ideal. But there are a lot of elements at play. I really don't think, based on all the information I have, the Vikings will go safety in round 1 unless Caleb Downs falls to 18. I really don't. Is that their best path forward? Your mileage will vary with all of this, because you can make an argument for about, I don't know, a dozen players at 18th
Safety,
overall.
Defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Across the board. Wide receiver.
And we're going to use that as a great transition point to the horizontal board. And let's talk about what the horizontal board is. So everybody is aware of what a big board is. It is just ranking your players 1 to however many. So if it's top 100, 1 to 100. I have a top 100. We'll end up using that kind of as a guideline during the course of the NFL draft. We'll also use my horizontal boards. And what the horizontal board does is it takes the total ranking of a player and then quantifies it with a draft pick. So, as Dave, I believe you have the graphics ready to go. Let's throw up the offensive one first. So it's the totality one. So basically, you take a look. The top line is, I got to enlarge the screen here. Out of reach. I believe Fernando Mendoza, Jeremiah Love, Vega Oane, Monroe Freeling, Francis Mauigoa, Ruben Bain, David Bailey, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese. I think those guys are out of reach. I don't think that they're making it to the Vikings. I don't think they're making it relatively close. I do believe all of those guys are going to be top 10 picks. Oane is one that I don't think makes it past the Lions. I doubt he makes it past like the Giants or the Ravens. It's a really, he's a guard, but he's a mauler. And teams are prioritizing guard more and more. So then you get down to the next one, which is trade up. So now we've got the offense here, okay? I'm going to pull up.
I can put both up if you want.
No, just to keep the offense up, because I think this is really, it's better to quantify it from a singular.
I'm sure people are complaining they can't read it because it's so small.
Yeah.
There's a lot of names.
Okay. So the essential breakdown is this. And if you want, both articles, offense and defense, are available on A2Zsports.com. If you want to kind of follow along on there and listen.
With these graphics there that you can see full if you're not watching on a big screen right now.
Yes, as I was saying, these graphics are on there. So There's out of reach, trade up, stick and pick at 18, trade down from 18, pick at 49, pick at 82, pick at 97, rounds 4 to 5, rounds 6 to 7 in UDFA. And it's the same for defense. So I don't think Mendoza, Love, Owane, Freeling, or Mauigoa are going to be just even within reach. I think they're not. Mekhi Lemon, Cardinal Tate, I would consider trading up for those players. Now, should you trade up for them? Different discussion. This is the value of what they are and then what they would bring to the Minnesota Vikings as they're currently constructed. Okay. Pick at 18. I only have 3 players on offense. Casey Conception, Denzel Boston, and Kenyon Sadiq. This is where things get interesting. And this is why a horizontal board is so important. Jordan Tyson's my wide receiver 4. Denzel Boston is my wide receiver 5. So why is Tyson below Boston? It's because of fit. I don't like Tyson's fit in this offense because I don't think he tries to play a super twitched up game, and I don't think he's a super twitched up player. He's explosive. He does a really good job in a lot of areas, but I think he tries to play like Justin Jefferson when he's not Justin Jefferson. So Boston, he's a traditional X. He knows what he is. He plays to those strengths. And I think he could bring a really interesting element to the discussion when it comes to the Vikings. Spencer Fano's there too. And we talked about it last week because I don't want to have a center who is trying to learn the center position as a first round pick. But if you trade down and he's available at, say, 28, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that because I think he's that good of a player. That's also why pick at 49 is 4 offensive tackles that are going to go in round 1. Caden Proctor, Caleb Lomu, Max Iannachor, and Blake Miller. Those guys are all going to go in the top 32 picks. But the Vikings really don't have a strong need at offensive tackle. They definitely don't have a need at guard, at least in the first round. But if one of those guys is available at 49, smash it. Take it. Because you can feel a lot more comfortable taking a depth player, an insurance policy in round 2, versus taking that guy in round 1. Because the future at both left and right tackle feels pretty secure, especially with the information that the Vikings are going to, they already have budgeted a Brian O'Neill extension. And then you have players, Jadarian Price, I would take it 49, but I bet he probably goes a little bit higher than that. Wide receiver, we got a few guys, Chris Bell, Jeremy Bernard, Ted Hurst, Chris Brazel, Omar Cooper Jr., couple guards, Manuel Pregnon from Oregon, Chase Basantis from Texas A&M. Neither of those guys, I believe, can be centers. But I do think that they're talented, and this is where you can feel okay drafting an insurance policy. 82, Jonah Coleman. I like Jonah Coleman, but we've talked a lot about this running back class, how I feel about it. If he's there at 82, I'll take him. I don't really want to take him at 49. Skylar Bell, UConn wide receiver. Eli Stowers, Max Clare, the tight ends. And this is your center range. Connor Lew, Jake Slaughter, Sam Hecht, Keelan Rutledge. Rutledge might be able to kick in and play center. And I feel a lot more confident and comfortable taking a player learning to play center in round 3 than I do in round 1. And this is where the horizontal board can really help you quantify some of that stuff. Because it's not just about talent. It's about fit. It's about identifying what makes sense. And I think having the right players in those situations can really make a big difference. This is just how I would structure it for the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to have something similar up available for them where they value players, how they value them. And let's talk about, let's say a guy like Jordan Tyson. He's a first round caliber wide receiver. That is universally agreed upon. Consensus does too. But he's got the injury history and it's soft tissue stuff. So he may be a guy that the Vikings really like, but the injury stuff. If he's available at 49, which he won't be, we'll take him at 49 because then we can feel comfortable with the medical situation paired with the talent and need on the football team. And you'll see players maneuver all throughout in that exact same way. So the horizontal board basically takes your top 100, top 250, however you want to structure a traditional big board, and it quantifies it in a really nice package. And this is the entire horizontal board, which we will share with you. So you can save it, download it, however you want to do it, so you can have access to it during the course of all 7 rounds of the NFL draft. And we will reference this throughout the course of the weekend because I think it's a really important aspect. Now let's take a look at defense, because the defense is very interesting. It's going to have a lot of things that are different from other people. But when different people put in the work, different people come to different conclusions. Sometimes you'll be right. Sometimes you'll be wrong. Let's take a look. Ruben Bain, David Bailey, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese. I think they're out of reach. The only guy I would trade up for is Caleb Downs. Because again, he's the best player in this class to me. I'll hear arguments for Arvell Reese. I'll hear arguments for Sonny Styles and Jeremiah Love. And maybe Fernando Mendoza. But I think that's more of a default, he's just a quarterback answer. Pick at 18, I have 5 guys. And one of them I'm torn on. And I'll explain in a minute. Peter Woods, Clemson defensive tackle. Keldrick Falk, Auburn edge rusher. CJ Allen, the Georgia linebacker. Clemson corner Avion Terrell. And then Tennessee corner Jermod McCoy. Based on talent, I would take McCoy. But there are some concerns that have popped up, including a potential degenerative knee. That was reported, I believe, by Tony Pauline. The knee is a concern with McCoy. If you're okay with the knee, then I think he's more than worthy of the 18th overall pick. So now with offense and defense, there are 7 players where I'm fine just sticking and picking. When it comes to a trade down, there are 12 guys on that list. And you may have 5 guys available at 18 that you feel good about. And then the Eagles come calling, like, hey, come down to 23. Okay. Then all of a sudden, you have a bevy of options at your disposal to take. Trade down. I think Caleb Banks is a trade down candidate. The foot is still concerning, but if you trade it down to like 32, I think that's a good spot for somebody to take Caleb Banks. Back end of the first round, anywhere in the second round, because there's less pressure on that player to, one, play right away, to hit. Kind of like the Lewis Cine factor, but the Vikings traded down from 12, which is an entirely different discussion. But you feel more comfortable taking the risk with a Caleb Banks the farther down the board you go. 3 edge rushers, R. Mason Thomas, TJ Parker, Cassius Howell, especially with a Grenard trade. I think this position becomes even more of a discussion point. Cornerback, I've got 4 guys. Mansour Delane. If the Vikings ever want to commit to man coverage, I'd take him higher, but based on what I know, they haven't really shown that they really want to commit to man coverage. D'Angelo Pons, the size limits him a little bit for me, but I still think high second round is more than fine for him. Colton Hood, Chris Johnson, Manuel McNeil Warren, and Traden Stukes, I would do with a trade down. Stukes I love, and I think the Vikings are going to love Stukes as well. I think he is exactly the kind of player that they want on the back end. Versatile, can play outside, can play inside, can play slot, can play in the box, can play over the top. And he's 24 with a lot of experience. That sounds like a Brian Flores secondary player to me. Pick at 49. This is where Caden McDonald is. I know Drew talked a lot yesterday on 2-0 Bloggers, which I highly recommend you go watch, about Caden McDonald, but I have real concerns about his pass rush. I don't care that he had 3 sacks and he had more sacks than the other top defensive tackles. It's not about collecting the stats. It's about how you do it. It's about how you accomplish it. And the fact that Caden McDonald was surrounded by top NFL prospects across the defensive line in the linebacker room, it's okay that he got 3 sacks. I don't think that matters. It's how you get them. And the how is by bull rushing and picking up garbage, which are both good things. But we're not talking about a high upside pass rusher, which is why, for me, he's at 49th overall. And why I still, based on the tape and the projection, Peter Woods and Caleb Banks, who I have higher on my big board as well, rank higher. Akeem Mesidor is at 49. Injury history and age, both no bueno. 25 years old, started as an interior guy, which theoretically could make him intriguing for Flores because he can play inside and out, but a lot of medical stuff with him. Malachi Lawrence is there. Gabe Yakas, Zion Young, Josiah Trotter. I love that dude. Linebacker is an interesting class this year. Keith Abney, and then Dylan Thieneman, AJ Halsey. I wouldn't take Thieneman. I would still feel a little uncomfortable with Thieneman at 49. I just don't like the player that much. But I think that's just me. And then you have a really interesting group at 82 and 97. I think of the next kind of group, Amari Harvey is somebody that I really like. Dave, just a heads up, Amari should be spelled with an I, not a Y. He's number 300 on a Reefs consensus board. I have him at 65. So I really like him. Davison Igbinosun, I think, is a player that the Vikings could really target. And 82, I think, would be a great spot. 2,801 snaps played in college. A lot of man coverage experience. He has 30 called penalties in college, but you can kind of coach that out of him. That's something that I'm willing to coach. And I like where this kind of secondary group is. I like where you can get a lot of really talented players. But overall, I think the biggest question mark outside of those guys is I have Anthony Hill and Jacob Rodriguez, the linebackers, round 4, round 5. I don't love them. I just don't. I'm okay with that. We've talked ad nauseum about why I don't really care for those players. But overall, that is our horizontal board. Before we kind of dive into the NFL draft, Dave, is there anything that you have that we should talk about with the horizontal board? And were there any questions in the comments? Because I was kind of just explaining a lot over there and I wasn't able to pay attention.
Well, I think the horizontal board is the best way to figure out who the Vikings are going to draft. It's the best way to figure out a draft because no matter what team you're trying to put together, if you had everybody's horizontal board, you'd better know the flow rather than just ranking 1 through 350 of what the team needs. And Brez talked about it today, how the draft sims always help with those because they help identify. He said years ago, we'd have to make phone calls all the time to figure out, well, do the Eagles need an edge, sort of deal. And this, with the draft sims, it shows basically a consensus of what teams are looking at where, all this stuff. And then with a horizontal board set up by each team, because each team's different, they can sit there and rank, hey, I've got all these people in this group. It shows me where the cliff is. I need to go, with this position now because there's nothing below that or nothing that, is worth it. So that's what I think the value of the horizontal board brings. It is a better way to present your draft picks, the ones you like, than just a vertical list, in my opinion. It's a smarter way of doing things. You can start with the vertical to see who's good and then place them on a horizontal.
It's just an easier way to quantify how you feel about the player. And it gives you a way to structure it based on need rather than just overall talent. Because when I structure a big board, it's just this guy's more talented than this guy. I project this guy to have a better future overall. But if you draft both of those players to the Vikings or the Bucks or the Seahawks or the Raiders, they're all going to have different futures and they're all going to have different projections. And I think from a team specific perspective, the horizontal board is the best way to go. And I think that's an important element. We're not just talking about the entire NFL. We're talking about the Vikings. And that's a big thing here. So horizontal board, we'll make those available for you. And so then you can kind of have those at your own disposal throughout the course of the draft and kind of see how I feel these players should go and how I project what the Vikings should do at certain spots. And it's okay if you disagree. It's not meant to be, this is the answer key. It's meant to be, this is a guideline for how players should go. That's it. Pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, George, I agree with you. Big round bellies all around. And we still did do a big round belly mock draft.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, it's not.
We've taken plenty of big round bellies, but I don't believe that this is the kind of draft where the Vikings should just
it's not focused on it. Not the Vikings are. No, this would be a fun thing for me to do.
They just don't have offensive line needs. Like, one, people want to think that they do, and two, that really mesh with at the top of the draft with what the Vikings need on the offensive line. Because with the Vikings having a budgeted extension already for Brian O'Neill, they don't need tackle. Unless you really think that Will Fries is just the dead man walking, you don't need guard either. Those are positions where if you take a guy on day 2, I think that's fine. But on day 1,
no, you don't need him.
I would have serious concern.
Unless you question Darrisaw's knee.
And I don't question Darrisaw's knee, because if the Vikings really had questions, they would not have pushed money forward. They wouldn't have done it. They would have found another way, which there were ways to be able to create salary cap space. There were ways to get there. But we are about 45 minutes in the show. Let's do a predictive mock draft leading into the weekend. And this is just going to come based on the AZ Sports Simulator. What would we do based on what was on the board? Let's break it down.
Let's do it. Welcome to Vikings First and SKOL's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick? And who's your favorite choice?
All right, let's break it down. So we're going to try and be predictive based on how the board falls. So we're going to pause at 11th overall. So Ruben Bain is there. I don't think the Vikings are going to try and trade up for Bain. Maybe Delane, but with how this secondary class is, I would have reservations about that. Freeling, I don't think so. McCoy will probably be available. Ioane, I don't think that the Vikings will want to target because, again, they just don't have a need at guard. And I don't think he's the center. He only played 17 snaps there in college, and I don't think he profiles well to playing center. Sadiq, you guys obviously know how I feel about Sadiq. So really, there's nobody we're trading up for because Downs went 10. Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs, not a bad haul for the Giants. Bain, Delane, Sadiq goes 15. That one kind of stinks. That would be a player that I would seriously take. And when you reference the horizontal board, you have some options. Falk, Woods, Conception, Terrell, and CJ Allen. All down to 33. Man, my coworkers are way too low on CJ Allen. KC is offering 74 and 169 to go up to pick 18. Now, this is a kind of like a hybrid scoring system with the Rich Hill and the Fitzgerald Spielberger. So the Vikings are getting a surplus here. A surplus of around the pick, the 180th pick. So would the Vikings take a high third round pick in order to go down 11 spots? Look, this might be what the offer is come draft day, because there really is not a whole lot else. This is not a strong class. The last time we had a really weak class, the Miami Dolphins in 2013 only paid the 42nd overall pick to go from 12 to 3. The Houston Texans going from 12-3 in 2023 gave up like 34, a first next year, and a third next year. They gave up a lot. Now it resulted in Will Anderson, and he just got paid $50 million average annual value a year over 3 years. So it worked out pretty well. But that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a draft where it's not going to give you a ton of surplus value when it comes to trades. So based on that trade offer, I think the Vikings would probably just stay and pick, which kind of stinks, right?
The Sports Draft Simulator doesn't allow trading future picks already, right? That's next year.
No, future picks are in. So if we were to counter, you can trade 2027 picks, not 28 picks.
Okay.
So you can trade 1 year out. You can't trade 2 years out. So we could counter and try to get 109. And that would be asking too much. You can try 148. That'll also probably be asking too much. But it tries to make it so you're not like just absolutely destroying somebody in a trade. So unfortunately, there's not really a good trade for us. That can happen. Though with how the board falls, that's realistic. So let's take a look. Based on the board, the needs of the team, and how I believe that they would attack, I think it's down to 2 players. Peter Woods, a defensive tackle. They spent some time talking to him. Casey Conception from Texas A&M. Have not really had a lot of links to him.
On Peter Woods.
They've talked to him at like pro days and the combine, and I think the combine.
But did you
not like a top 30?
Was there a SKOL search?
No, that's coming out tomorrow. You're burying the lead here, Dave. So tomorrow there will be a SKOL search with Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, and Kate McDonald.
Most likely afternoon, evening.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully not evening, Dave, because we
are
going live tomorrow night. So Conception identifies everything that the Vikings want in a wide receiver. Well-rounded, explosive, can play all across the line of scrimmage. Woods, look, you're kind of getting him on a discount based on what he was going into the year. And I think defensive tackle is a position of need. I also think he's worthy of the pick based on the horizontal board. Trying to be predictive from a Vikings perspective because a trade down isn't there. And Sadiq is gone, which that one kind of hurts. I think they would go Peter Woods. The wide receiver is
Concepcion.
Yeah, the wide receiver position is something that I would seriously consider here. As far as Caden McDonald, Brian Flores, I don't think would give a green light to a nose tackle in round 1. I don't see it. And that is separate from my opinion. You don't need to get a quality nose tackle in round 1. The Vikings had the number 2 rush defense with Harrison Phillips, above average nose tackle, Jonathan Bullard, a replacement level DN, and Jerry Tillery, another replacement level DN. You don't need to spend a lot of money to fix a run defense. You want to spend a lot of assets to fix your pass rush because that's where the value is. You can find good run defenders all over the place. So that is not something that I would do. And it's not something I believe the Vikings would do either. All right, let's go 49. Some interesting players on the board. Let's take a look at our trade offers because I do think that they are going to want to accumulate capital. They can get a 4th round pick by going down 4 spots with the Steelers. They can get a slightly worse 4th round pick to go down 6 spots with the Chargers. The Jags, a slightly worse pick to go down 7 spots. We're seeing a trend here. Basically 4th round pick. I think the best offer is actually the Steelers have the best offer because it's the highest pick and it's the lowest down. So we're going to take the Steelers offer. I will say, based on some of the things I've heard, Anthony Hill Jr., if he makes it to like 82, that's a player to watch for the Vikings, even though I don't like him. It's a player to watch. So we have a defensive tackle. And now we can go a bunch of different directions. I don't think Connor Lew is a good play in the 50s. I think he would be a good play at 82. One, I think he's more of just a solid stalwart type player. And 2, the torn ACL. So there's a multitude of factors. I think round 3 is a perfect spot for the center position. I don't know if I would take it earlier than that. Yakas, if you want more of an effort type edge, he's more of a big physical frame. Lee Hunter, again, nose tackle. Got drawn some comparisons to Pat Williams. I don't think you need to take a nose tackle here. I don't think you need to take a nose tackle at all. Jeremy Bernard, that's a guy that I love. Jacob Rodriguez, I don't know. I haven't heard about how the Vikings feel about him. Jennings Dunker, I'd be shocked if they took Dunker. He can't move. He loves Culver's. He's got a red mullet, and he seems like a good dude. I don't want him playing for my football team. The one guy I believe the Vikings will be obsessed with is Traden Stukes. We're going to take Stukes. Versatile on the back end. Can play safety, can play corner, can play in the box, over the top, in the slot, out wide. You can ask him to do anything you want. Plus, 24, a lot of experience. Both huge factors when it comes to the Vikings playing in Brian Flores' defense. So now that we're down to 82, let's take a look. Bernard is still on the board. Connor Lew is on the board. Let's take a look at interior offensive line. Hecht is still there. Logan Jones is still there. Brailsford, I do like. He's more of like a take in round 4 kind of guy. Logan Jones, I don't care for. I don't know how the Vikings would feel about Logan Jones because he's basically a worse version of Garrett Bradbury. When you take a look at how the Vikings would prioritize this, and I think that's the big thing. Try to be predictive of what the Vikings will do. I think Jonah Coleman's a realistic option.
What are we showing on your horizontal big board at this point?
Let me pull it up.
We should be using it at this point.
82. Jonah Coleman is on there. Connor Lew is on there. So is Sam Hecht. I have Logan Jones in around 4 to 5 range. I'd feel a lot more comfortable around 5. Let's see. Edge rusher Romello Height is on there if you want to go edge. Jeremy Bernard is obviously, he's a pick at 49 guy. I think based on this, I would go like from a predictive standpoint. I think wide receiver is an interesting one. Let's pull up just the wide receivers because it would be nice if Ted Hurst was still here. DeJon Stribling, I know it says 147 on here. He's probably going top 64. So I'm going to ignore the fact that he's here because I just don't see it as plausible. Okay. Taking a look from a predictive standpoint, I think it'd be hard for the Vikings to pass on Connor Lew. Even though he's got the knee, and even though I don't believe center is this massive need, they've done a ton of work on him, and I think that that's going to be a priority. But Jonah Coleman on the board. They've done a lot of work on him too. And Coleman's an interesting player. He's a bowling ball. I have him as a high 3rd round grade. 5'8", 220. He's basically Aaron Jones with like 12 pounds. That's kind of what he is. I think the average speed kind of, but overall, I think he's a really good player. And when it comes to the running back position, I do think the Vikings are going to want to prioritize a guy. So we're going to take Jonah Coleman. Would I take Jonah Coleman here? No, I'd probably still punt on running back, but I think 82 is a fine value for him.
Okay, KLC had to get something. He's got 2 defenders ahead of him. He's probably itching to grab an offensive player.
Absolutely. So now we have defensive tackle, safety, running back. We can do a multitude of things here. We can take Sam Hecht, the center. We can take Devin Moore at corner, who's an interesting player, 6'3", 198. Durability concerns, but tested well. 4.5 40, I think, is more than fine at 6'3", 198 with decent length. He's also the only player in the FBS to have an 80 coverage grade and an 80 run defense grade in the same year. So that's a really fun one. Trying to be predictive from a Vikings standpoint. That's the mindset I'm trying to get at. I don't think corner is something that they're going to need to prioritize if they don't want to, but I think this would be the spot to take it if they do. Center, obviously, the Hecht is available. Do they like Hecht? I'm going to guess that they do. Look, short arms, not great, but he's 6'4", 300. Guess what he doesn't have? Anchor issues. We'll take no anchor issues. Because what does Logan Jones have? Well, strength issues, leverage issues. I don't like that. So, one interesting thing that they've done a lot of work on Emmett Johnson. I have concerns, Dave, that the Vikings will actually like Emmett Johnson. The reason being, Johnson is like a gap scheme guy, and they like to run a lot of zone. So are they going to want to take a guy like Johnson, who is much more of a, I know what hole I'm running into, and I go? I don't know. I find that very interesting.
Local feel-good story. He's one of us.
Yeah, he is. And I think that's good for the fan base. It's good for PR.
Vikings PR loves that stuff.
Yeah. But is that good for on the field? Nah, it doesn't mean anything on the field. Okay, so we've got a really diverse group of players. Defensive line, safety, running back, center. I think Trey Zune is an option for the Vikings because he can theoretically play 5 spots. And Biggs mentions that Emmett Johnson can't pass protect. Guess who can? Jonah Coleman might be the best pass protector in this class. I don't think they'll double down on offensive line this early. I think that there's a really good chance that they take one later, like round 6, round 7. But I don't think they would go back-to-back picks on the offensive line. It's certainly possible. I have my doubts. I think this is where you take a corner. Maybe a linebacker. Keyshawn Elliott is an interesting guy. 2 people that I really respect. Corey Kinnan, Daft on Draft, who just released his draft guide. I highly recommend you go check that out. It's worth paying for. He gave me a copy. We'll be using that throughout the course of draft weekend. Go check stuff out, daftondraft.football. Really good explosion scores. Didn't run the 40 at the combine, but really good explosions. And overall, decent size. 6'2", 231. He and James Foster of the Daft on Draft podcast both have him at 66 overall on their big board, and consensus he's a lot lower. There aren't many people that I trust more than those guys when it comes to evaluating. Run defender, play strength. Look, he doesn't have coverage speed, but you're not going to ask him to do a lot of man stuff. You're going to ask him to do a lot more zone. I think Amari Harvey, my guy, is an interesting one. But I think you can maybe get a corner down in round 5. I don't know if you're getting a linebacker there. I think the Vikings are going to prioritize linebacker more than corner because they had a top 2 pass defense with 3 corners last year. So take the linebacker, get a depth player who can be a special teams maven early on and figure it out on defense later. So now we're going to be down to 163. I hope DeJon Stribling goes. There he goes. He's probably going to go top 64, so just be prepared for that. So now we have some interesting ones. Landon Robinson, defensive tackle, Navy. He's a little unconventional. He's under 6 foot, but that helps you win the leverage battle. I think under 6 foot is just a little bit too short. I would prefer if it was just like 6 1/2 inch. That would make me feel a little bit better. But you have Peter Woods, so you don't have to panic about defensive tackle.
Yeah, but if you're that short as a defensive tackle, i.e. thinking nose, you've got to be 5 foot wide to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's not. He didn't get invited to the combine, but he's a solid player. He played 1 tech, but he's projects much more as a 3 tech at the next level as far as being a gap shooter and pass rusher. I think if the Vikings are going to go anywhere here, they still don't have a corner. And I think Tacario Davis kind of fits. Remember when the Vikings took Kyrie Jackson and that mold, tall, lanky, long arms, 6'4", 4'4", 140. Look at some of these measurables. Great arm length, decent hand size, great height, great speed and explosiveness. Like, this is an upside play, and the Vikings love to play a lot of zone. Davis will thrive in like a cover 3 role, and he's athletic enough. Like, he's not Reek Woolen, where Roland ran a 4.26 40. He's not that. But he's going to be able to give you some of the things that Woolen gave you and be a little bit more fluid in doing so. That length, that size, it's going to be a factor. And he's not going to play as aggressive because he doesn't quite have that makeup speed that Woolen does. So, an interesting kind of situation here. Now, we're at 196. Not a lot of guys here. No wide receiver yet. So I think Cyrus Allen, who is not a combine invite, but he's a slot specialist. I don't think the Vikings will love a slot specialist. They never really wanted to prioritize that with Kevin O'Connell. So that is not something I'm really looking at. The Vikings already have a running back, so Seth McGowan and Le'Veon Moss are out. Taylon Green, I don't think that they would take one. Dalton Johnson is interesting. He's a little bit smaller. He's more of a box guy, but he does have some development, as it says here, strong development trajectory. Not a great athlete, but nobody cares about athleticism with safeties. Like, the best safeties normally aren't the best athletes because it's about intelligence. It's about instincts. It's about reading offenses and reading what's going on in front of you. You have Stukes, who's going to be like that versatile piece. Now, Johnson can be a little bit more of a traditional box kind of player, and you can be versatile with him. You can be versatile with Josh Metellus, and you can do a lot of different things. So the Vikings now have, they have a corner, they have 2 safeties, a defensive tackle, a linebacker, and a center. And did we take a wide receiver yet? We have not.
We have not. And the Vikings definitely probably would have by now.
More than likely, yes. But sometimes with these exercises, looking at what's on the board, it just doesn't make sense because something else makes more of it. So there's nobody here that the Vikings have. Vinny Anthony, I don't think he's a draftable player. So I think he's more of a UDFA kind of guy. One player I think that they'll like based on some of the players they brought in is J. Michael Sturdivant from Florida. He's already proven he can be a special teamer. He ran in the 4.4s. He's a former high school sprinting champion, and he can play X, he can play Y, he can play Z, and that kind of versatility plus the special teams element, I think is a no-brainer. So that will be the pick. How there. Tall was he? He's like 6'2", 206.
Okay.
So Caleb Douglas, I don't believe Douglas is still on the board. Because that would be a guy that I would have taken. Plus, the Vikings have spent some time with him. All right, let's take a look back at the board. Look, another interior offensive lineman. I think DJ Campbell. Look, this guy was talked about as maybe being like a top 50 pick at one point. You get him at 235. You get some more depth on the offensive line, which I think is an important factor here. And that happens. Now, looking at this, I'm going to keep making the pick. I really think the Vikings will be in on Eric Gentry. I really do. Because he's unique, and Brian Flores knows how to use unique type players. Plus, special teams ace. 6'6", 228, runs in the 4.5s. Just let him run. Let him do things. And we got a B+. A- for Peter Woods, A for Takario Davis, A- for Dalton Johnson. B+ all throughout day 2 and 3, and then B's at the very end, which, whatever. Dave, I think this ended up being pretty good. We would have loved to have had one more trade down from 18, but the board didn't let us do that. So download that, send it to you, and that is one of our last mock drafts here of the cycle. We'll have a full first round on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we'll have one in the afternoon. And then we'll be live Thursday night. Get excited. This is an exciting time.
Hey, it's going to be a busy week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. The whole NFL draft week. Vikings draft week. Here we go.
That's fun. I love little gimmicks like that. So we'll be live tomorrow night, 6:05, breaking down the All Forno team. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, full first round mock draft from a predictive standpoint. I will be releasing it my article for A to Z Sports just before we go live. And then Thursday afternoon / morning, time still to be determined, probably around noon. We'll be breaking down the final mock draft tracker and the latest trends throughout the entire sphere. And then we'll do one final Vikings mock draft. And then just before 7 o'clock, probably 6:55. So you guys, you don't have to join us a half hour early, but just a little early. We'll be going live for the
and we appreciate you joining us on these live drafts. I know everybody and their brother, for some reason, wants to go live this year. We've been doing it for what? Back
Dave,
since...
You and I have been doing it since 2020. I think you've been doing it longer.
Since, Good Morning Gallahorn, we did it as well. Back when it was just me, Ted, and Drew. It's a tradition here.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot of guests once we get to day 3. So.
Yes, absolutely. And I will have to pop out in and out a little bit just because I have a lot of actual work to do for A to Z Sports. So just be prepared for that. If I'm off the stream, like, hey, where's Forno? I'm coming back. I promise.
Don't worry. David's here drinking whiskey.
Yes, absolutely. Friday morning, we'll talk about the pick from the previous night, and we'll do a day 2 mock draft. Friday afternoon, about just before 6, we'll go live, and we'll be live for all of day 2. Saturday, we'll be live for all of day 3. Sunday, 2 all bloggers. Monday night, back to normally scheduled programming with the Real Forno Show. Do not miss it. Like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss anything, because some of this is going to be relatively timely. And if you miss it, you might not be able to have a chance to catch up on it because it's going to go real fast. Thank you guys so much for joining. We look forward to seeing you all week long. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!